Today we are talking about the Zhuang Zi, one of the ancient philosopher, the scholar. And thanks to Shen Kang for his invite. And I have to confess, I'm not an expert in Zhuang Zi. And in fact, I wasn't such a keen to actually read his teaching because I had the impression that he's very much aligned with the Taoist teaching, and he doesn't have any additional stuff to say. And until I was asked by another group to see if we can discuss about it, and then I start to make some effort, and I start reading some translation, and I decided, wow, I better do it myself. So that's how I started. And after knowing that I have completed the two chapters, and Shen Kang invited me to host this session, and I thought that's a good opportunity for me to share, and also looking forward your feedback and sharing, and that's the way how I feel I can refine the translation. And Zhuang Zi is not really the name of the author, but it's a respectable calling. And do you understand? Zhuang is the family name. It's actually more than family name. It's a tribe name, the family clan name. Zi, originally, this character, Zi, really means offspring. There is no connotation about the sex. There is no connotation about young or old. It's simply designed, the ancient, they designed this character to represent offspring. If you look at this character, the shape, originally it's very narrowed. It's like a tadpole. It is a reflect of if you ever observe the mosquito, they lay the eggs in the water. And this kind of thing, this character representing it's the offspring. Now, by understanding this is offspring, you can understand this whole the calling is a bit of humbling, really. It's talking about some families' offspring. So it's become this is, I guess, the traditional way people referring to something when they are talking to some kids, in a village. They say, "Oh, this is one family's, the child." So that's how it started, and later on, this has become reserved to describe not just an ordinary scholar, but a great scholar, because a great scholar representing, the offspring of a client, the family clan. So it's kind of glorious, a thing. So usually, if you look at it, if it's a start with the family name and then the Zhi, that usually means a great scholar. And if you look at if it is the average one, usually people will use the given name, followed by this Zhi. And there is also a tendency for family to give their children's name containing this. They usually start with this, 字, to something, to express that the desire to have a child to become a scholar, or simply the scholar themselves given themselves such a name, not a birth name, but rather a adult a pen name, if you like. So so Zhuang Zi is obviously a great scholar, and that's how people refer him, use such a family name and followed by this character. I want to point out that there are two people even more than just a great scholar. One is the Confucius. Confucius is really, if you look at the original character, is a Kong Fu Zi. So there is an additional character in between. And that additional character in between to indicate that is very special. That's effectively like the specific one, equivalent to the English THE, the, the scholar. So and also people usually when you confront someone, usually people don't actually quote their family name at all. And particularly, students, they call their teacher. They never say, Zhuang Zi. They would say Zi. So it become the effectively become the term as a master or sir, Another person is a Lao Tzu, because Lao is not really the family name. I think that is also a special treatment about such a great scholar. Lao Tzu, partly because people really not sure about his family name, so he's nameless. So the Lao is really means senior, old. And in Chinese culture, senior or old is very respectful, and it's very experienced and well versed. So it's kind of representing the experience. Now, Zhuang Zi is about was born around 300 BC. In a period that the society, all the kingdoms are fighting each other, and also at the period, there are lots of different school of thoughts emerges. I considered this started about 500 years before that, or even longer. It's probably around time when I Ching, has been written. You probably heard about the I Ching. The I Ching has been around, and but that there was there is some the rumors or understanding that it is inspired by some they call them miracles, that which is the patterns that are over the animals, back of the animal, which suddenly give sort of reveal the inside, and suddenly people realize the universe actually follow the pattern, and it's not random, but more like a math. So that's how I make people think about the universe. That's how the I Ching has come about. Now, I consider that is a little insight to the order of the cosmos. And because of that little insight, making people to start to wanting to know more. And that's how, and people suddenly realize they can be ahead of others. And that's how the violence also started intensified. And because suddenly people are engaging their intellect more than their awareness. And I think probably that's how the previously matriarch moving to patriarch, because of the violence involved, because of the fighting started. And also different school of thoughts also flourished. And so in Zhuang Zi's time, there are already many formed school of thoughts. Zhuang Zi, when I start reading Zhuang Zi, I actually really liked his writing, because he is such a free thinker and critical thinker. He is not associate anyone. He's not after the fame. He's not after the wealth. He's simply the man of his own mind. He is brilliant intellectually, and he's not. He's basically expressed his opinion without any, constraints. It's unfettered. And he criticized everyone. So if you read about, he's tried to, bash the other school of thoughts and try to endorse the Taoist teaching, I would say that is unfounded. I consider he does not even consider himself as a Taoist. He simply exercised his intellect, his awareness, and decided that Taoist teaching is the truth. That's his way of thinking. So this is really, his endorsement is really a testimony. It's testimony on one hand for the Tao Te Ching, what the Lao Tzu has been written. After Zhuang Zi has looked at all the school of thoughts. It's also testimony for Zhuang Zi. I think it reflects Zhuang Zi is not only the brilliant, the intellectual. He also have the capacity to be aware, to have that awareness, which means he is able to let his intellect, put his intellect aside. And so I'll read a little bit the preface, and you can read later on. And I consider he's a kind of Taoist philosopher, because he basically believes that, but he's very much a man of his own. And I don't even I haven't heard about that he has any students. And this book is really a collection of his writing, and probably without his knowledge. And according to the great history book, Ji, his writing covers about 100,000 words. So the version we have got today is about 33 if I remember, 32 or 33 chapters. I did a counting, excluding all the punctuation. It's only about 66,000 characters. So it's about a half. And I heard that there is some more is going to be restored. So it's altogether would be about 50, 54 or 53 the chapters. And so there is speculation about the inner chapters are written by Zhuang Zi himself, and the others are not. I just don't feel they are factual, and it's a mere speculation. And that speculation only started from last century, very recent. I would say he has written more than what is showing today. And according to the Great History book, which is I consider the more, authentic. Again, his book, I consider that have a more historical values, and also literature, the value in the literature, not much in the philosophical point, because it's very much covered by Tao Te Ching. And we have some Taoists, they come up some their own thing, like Yang Zhu, like Li Zi. A little bit extra of their own is really the reflection to me that they have not grasped the full depths of Tao Te Ching. What they have come up their own are really deviate from that teaching, and it's not really represent the truth. For example, Yang Zhu, I don't know if you heard about that. He emphasized about one should prize self, try to appreciate more about the self. Now, this is quite a contradictory to what the teaching from Tao Te Ching, and anyone who is truly realized, because this notion of self is not real, right? Everything is interconnected. Anything you try to emphasize one, the other, it's against the Wu, it's against the truth. So for this regard, I also appreciate Zhuang Zi does not go beyond, what is supposed to be. It reflects his really the depths of realization. So let's, without all further ado, let's start with the first chapter. And is there anyone wish to volunteer to read for us?
Folks, don't be shy. If you would like to read, please go ahead and type an exclamation mark or raise your hand in Zoom. Would anybody like to read?
I can read
yes,
a little bit.
Mark, go ahead.
Thank you, Mark.
Sure. Now, I'm looking at the translation by Martin Palmer.
No. We're
okay.
looking at the translation. You want Peji, do you want your translation to be read, or someone else's translation? Okay.
Yeah.
Sure.
We can look at the others' translation later, but
Yes.
let's focus mine first.
Yes. Mark, can you read from the screen?
Yeah.
Yes.
Or I can enlarge a little bit.
Yes, I can see it.
Okay. Go right ahead, Mark.
In the northern deep end lies a fish named Kun, little fish, so big that its span reaches an unknown number of miles. It transforms into a bird known as Peng, companionable, with its back spanning an unknown number of miles. When it rouses itself and flies off, its wings appear as clouds hanging from the sky. As a bird, it embarks on a migratory journey to the southern deep end, a heavenly pool. Universal comics, a compendium of bewildering wonders, describes in these words: when Peng migrates to the southern deep end, the water are roiling for 3,000 miles. Propelling itself with mighty flaps, it ascends 90,000 miles, taking a respite every 6 months. Amidst undulating heat, specks of dust, and the air breathed by living things, the sky appears blue. Is it its true hue? Or is it because of its vast distance and boundless expanse? If one were looking down from the sky, the very same appearance would just meet his view. Furthermore, insufficient water depth cannot support a large boat. Pouring a cup of water into a hollow in the floor, a leaf may serve as a boat, but the cup would get stuck due to shallow water and a large boat. Similarly, if the wind lacks sufficient force, it cannot sustain vast wings. Thus, when soaring 90,000 miles above, there must be such a wind beneath it. Only then can the bird soar atop the wind. With the blue sky on its back, there must be nothing that can obstruct its course. Only then can the bird take on a journey to the south. The cicada and the little pigeon laughed at this, saying, when we exert ourselves to fly, we may reach the summits of the elm and the sapwood trees, but sometimes we fail and fall to the ground. Now, how could anyone fly up 90,000 miles for going to the south? To walk from dawn to dusk, back before dinner, a traveler's belly can still be as full. To walk 40 miles, a traveler grinds grain at night before the next journey. To walk 400 miles, a traveler carries provisions for 3 months. What do these two creatures know? Move it up a little bit, Paiji. Little knowing pales in comparison to great knowing. The short-lived knows little about the short-lived knows little about what the long-lived knows. How is this so? Morning mushrooms are oblivious to twilight and dawn, and cicadas are unaware of spring and autumn. Such are the characteristics of the short-lived. In the southern region of Chu, there exist deep-spirited beings that regard 500 years as one spring and 500 years as one autumn. In ancient times, a great tree regarded 8,000 years as one spring and 8,000 years as one autumn. Yet Peng Zhu, in our present time, is said to have lived an extraordinarily long life. If people were to compare themselves to him, would they not be miserable?
Thank you, Mark. Let's stop here. We can go a little bit further. It's all under the one. Yeah, let's go a bit further because it's under one subtitle. I will explain later.
Okay. The inquiry from Tang to Ji yields a similar description. In the bald and barren north, there is a deep sea, a heavenly pool. Within it resides a fish, spanning several thousand miles, yet no one knows its length. It is called Kun. There is also a bird known as Peng, with a back like Mount Tai and wings like the clouds hanging from the sky. Propelling itself with mighty flaps, it ascends 90,000 miles, breaking through the clouds with the blue sky on its back, and then sets its sights on the south towards the southern deep end. A little quail, critics, laughs at the bird, saying, "Why would it even bother? I soar up high, only to descend after a few yards, gliding among the weeds and brambles. This is the utmost of flight. Why would it even bother? Such is the difference between the little and the great."
Continue, Les.
Thus it is that a person whose wisdom is adequate for the duties of some one office, or whose conduct leaves a lasting impression on some one village, or whose virtue is befitting a ruler so that he could efficiently govern some one state, tends to view themselves in this manner as the quail. Yet Zhuang Zi would have simply smiled and laughed at such a notion. Unaffected by the praises of the entire world and undeterred by its criticism, Zhuang Zi draws a clear line between the internal and the external, recognizing the boundaries of honor and disgrace, nothing more. His position in the world had become inconsequential to him, even though there still seemed to be unfinished tasks. There was Li Zi, who rode the wind effortlessly, moving like a breeze, but returning only after 15 days. His position among those of great fortune mattered little to him. Although he evaded the trouble of walking, he still relied on something to get around. If he had embarked on the correct path of heaven and earth, traversed the 6 discernible air currents to roam the boundless expanse, then what would he have needed to depend on? Hence it is said, the perfect human perceives no self or selfless. The divine being needs no merits, meritless. The sage seeks no fame, nameless.
Thank you, Mark. That's great. The whole the lines I think I have summarized as great and a little. So on the different perspective. Now open for, is there anything that unclear to you? I think these paragraphs are pretty straightforward. So open for sharing questions. And if you wish, you can also share your favorite translation or point out some discrepancy, and let's discuss. How about that, Shranka?
Perfect, perfect. And I will run the moderating as long as I can. And if I step away, if my video is off, I have people working in China, so I'm trying to work with them. I might have to step away, but let me start with my first impressions here. I'll try to be brief. I think Zhuang Zi is profound. I really love this form of presenting ideas. You know, he's contrasting the big versus little. But big versus little, he's really talking about one which is focused on the 10,000 things and one which is focused on the Tao, which is universal. And he's saying that there is really no, the people who are talking only with those 10,000 things, or actually 10 things that are around them, cannot really grasp what this big way of operating is. And it's just a beautiful way of showing it, you know, with, I love the little birds saying that, what is he doing? Flying is not that. That's not flying. Flying means you can go here and then you come down. That's what flying is. So I just love, you know, the way he concretizes the Tao in this nature. But would love to hear from anybody. Go ahead and type an exclamation mark or raise your hand in Zoom. Laura, what do you think?
You know, in the beginning, I want to question, what is the significance of 90,000 miles and all the distances that he brings in numerically? Is there any significance in that? Or are they just huge numbers that are seemingly unattainable? And then sometimes attainable and then unattainable. And that, you know, juxtaposition of those who can succeed and those who can't, or whatever. Does that, or is it just, do you know?
Go ahead, Peter.
Yeah, thank you for the question. I was gonna explain that bit. The original character, it's actually the Chinese measurement. It's a li. Li, the unit of measurement is not miles. It's li is like a half of the kilometer. I didn't bother to convert the measurement simply because if you look at this writing, it's talking about unknown number of miles. So why bother to convert since the overall measurement is unknown? So you're right. It's this is about this is a literature. It's about to indicate the significance, the length. It's not meant to be to read in the literal way. You know, it's not, no such a thing as that large.
You know,
Yes. Let me just add one thing, Laura. Just
Yes.
like Tao Te Ching uses 10,000 things.
Mhm.
Right?
Yeah.
10,000 means infinite. It's larger than what people can grasp. Go ahead.
Because I'm visual, I started to try and draw the picture of this, you know, huge bird and everything. And, you know, you just can't do anything with it because you can't create a picture because the dimensions are just too absurd to put anything down on a plane, you know, on a two-dimensional. Anyway, I was just curious about that to start with. And then, of course, the rest of it sort of makes sense in the interaction of it. But that's it. I just want, thank you.
Wonderful.
Yeah, it's a different scale. You can still draw, but in a different scale. And by the way, and Lao Tzu's writing about 10,000. I think it should be read as 10,000 S with S, because in Chinese writing, it doesn't have singular or plural. In fact, when there is no, the figure, the one is indicated, right? Because the original text didn't say 1 10,000. So therefore, it should be treated as a plural. So 10,000s, which really means huge, because the character 10,000 is the largest number at the time. The character that can represent the largest number a one character can do. So it's a plural form. It just means 10,000s with S.
Wonderful.
And so so the really the underlying meaning is all things.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for that clarification. Next up is going to be Mark. Folks, go ahead and type an exclamation mark or raise your hand in Zoom in order to make comments or ask questions. Mark.
Thanks, Shrikant. I just wanted to build on the previous speaker's question about the expanse of distance, the 90,000 li, whatever it happens to be. It seems as if there's even more going on here than just the unimaginable expanse of distance. There's also an expanse of time, and I think in a way it's pointing to something which is completely unknown. Both of the tellings of the story begin with something like in the dark north, as if even the origin of this is geographically shrouded in mystery. The fish, I think it was kun, was so long, but nobody really knew how long it was. Again, it was shrouded in mystery. And then in the story of the trees, which were 5,000 years old, then 8,000 years old, though, as you go back further and further in time, there is a greater sort of mythologizing of time, almost like the kind of thing that we can see in the Sumerian Kings list on a website like Electronic Text Corpus of Sumerian Literature, where the further back we go, the longer the lifespans are. And we can even see this in the Bible in terms of the lifespans before and after the flood. So there's a lot that is unknown here, and a lot of sort of projection of mystery in the realms of both space and time. I see it as.
Thank you, Mark. Indeed. Another text relating to the distance is about walking distance, and here I did a conversion because I think it's required, because we're talking about walking for a few days or walking for 3 months. Therefore, the conversion is warranted. So I did a bit of rough conversion. And I like to use the miles rather than li, because it just because it's insignificant in terms of what exactly the measurement, and you don't want the reader to have this the added difficulty to find out what the li is. And also I could use the kilometers, but I feel miles here is a more sounds better. If you say kilometers, then the conversion will become easier. It's half of it. So this is about great and a little. And you can see I didn't put great versus small or great versus little. And I don't want to make it read as a dualistic. It's about different perspective. But the undertone of the author is clearly being a bit of critical to the little little thing, which representing all of us. And often we are often express our view or act centered around ourselves in a very small, scale. And so this whole thing is really about to ask reader to think big and go to beyond, the outside of the square, I guess. And Marx bring us to some further dimension and looking at the really there is unknown. The universe is such. Indeed, it reflects that.
Wonderful. So Peichi, what would you like to do? Would you like to continue reading till the end of the chapter? Oh, wait a minute.
We are happy to take a question, or we can continue.
Sure.
Nick, please.
There is one question by Nick, and then we will continue. Nick, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. It was very interesting. So I'd like to build on the first question asked by Laura. This geometrical impossibility. Or this obviously the whole essay or whole writing is very romantic, right? There's a full of romanticism, but it carries one string of Chinese thought, which is to look at things from macro perspective, but de-emphasize the micro details, and therefore, the distances, the sizes don't seem to make sense. They don't, the size of the bird or the fish and the length it could travel. So it may not make sense. So in that sense, in that way, the Chinese saw that as reflected in Zhuang Zi here, ignores the details of the inaccuracies of geometry, because by the time Zhuang Zi's time, I think the Greeks were very advanced in geometry already. And the motto that nobody who are ignorant in geometry are not allowed was very popular already in the Greek society. But here in the Chinese thinking, the attention is paid to macro picture, to get the full, gigantic heavens and earth and how we sort of behave within that without paying scientific attentions to details. Yeah, that's I get from here. Thanks.
Thank you, Nick, for your sharing.
Thank you. Next up is going to be Mark, followed by Laura, and then we'll continue with the reading. Mark.
I did have one question about your translation, Paichi. In the line where it says that if you look down from heaven towards earth, and then the second half of that line,
this part? If one were looking down,
it's right after Emperor Tang debated with Qi. I'm not sure if you have the same sort of translation, but it's at the beginning of the second story. In the barren north, there was a dark sea called Heaven's Pool.
You mean up here, right?
I think so, yes. And if
breaking through the clouds with a blue sky on its back, that's the only place.
No, it's really where it says he goes 90,000 miles high, soaring through the clear blue sky, and I had it in this other channel.
Mark, it is there on the screen. I think.
No, I think Mark is reading his own
his own
translation.
Okay.
I think to compare. That's fine. Yeah.
Oh, to compare. Okay, got it.
Yes, I'm comparing it with Martin.
Perfect. Can we do one thing? Can we read this entire paragraph in that translation, and then we'll read this one, and then we can compare?
Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm sure this isn't the exact passage I'm talking about. I'm talking about a passage where it says, "What would it look like if you peered down from heaven?"
Oh, okay. That's the beginning. That's quite a here. This part.
Okay. Yes. If one were looking, okay, amidst undulating heat, specks of dust, and the air breathed by living things, the sky appears blue. Is it its true hue, or is it because of its vast distance and boundless expanse? If one were looking down from the sky, the very same appearance would just meet his view. Okay, so I think
What's your translation?
I think it really does. I'm now trying to find it in my translation. I'm sorry, but I think it basically his translation. Palmer said it would look the same, and I think that's really what you're saying here. So it's not any discrepancy, really.
Yeah, different expression, but with a similar understanding. Yeah.
Right.
Thanks.
Right.
Anyway. Yeah.
My apologies.
Oh,
No, not at all.
Mark, I appreciate your your attention to detail. Actually, that's what I do also when I'm reading multiple Tao translations. You want to look at multiple translations and see if there is slight difference in flavor. There is some denotation which is slightly different, because each author may capture something, and then you try to look at the original and try to say which one captures it very well. So thank you, appreciate that, Mark.
Yeah.
Next up is Laura. Laura, go ahead. Laura, you need to unmute.
We can't hear you.
Yeah, we can't hear you, Laura. Okay, so Peji, shall we continue with the translation?
Yeah, let's continue.
Mark, can we volunteer you for reading, continuing the reading? It was wonderful.
Sure.
Thank you.
Since you are such a good reader, so the next one is about worldly and beyond. That's my added subtitle. So let me know if you want me to enlarge a little bit for you.
My reading is made easier by your translation, Haiji.
Thank you.
Now, I can't see the first line. Okay. Yao intended to relinquish the throne to Zhu Yu, saying, "The sun and moon shine, yet the torch fire persists. Is it not challenge for it to radiate effectively? The seasonal rain falls, yet the ground remains saturated. Is it not laborious to deal with the excess? If you ascend the throne, the nation will be well governed, while I remain stagnant like a corpse. I perceive my own shortcomings. Please accept the throne." Zhu Yu replied, "You have ruled the nation and the nation has already been well governed. If I were to take your place, would it be merely for the sake of the title, name? The holder of the title would just be a guest only. Should I be that guest? When a wagtail builds her nest in the deep wood, she uses no more than one branch. When a mouse drinks from a river, he takes no more than his fill. Return and rest, my lord. I am no use for ruling the nation. Even if the cook abandons the kitchen, the sacrificial officiant does not leave the altar to take his place.
Continue.
Jian Wu said, only the distant Gushe mountain, on the distant Gushe.
Yeah. So you
there,
missed the beginning?
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Jian Wu inquired of Lian Shu, saying, I have heard words from Ji Yu that are grand but unfounded, persisting without reflection. I am amazed and frightened by these words, as if they were boundless like the Milky Way, vast and incomprehensible, far removed from human sentiment. Lian Shu responded, what were these words? Jian Wu said, on the distant Gushe mountain, there dwell divine beings. Their skin are as cold as ice and snow, magnificent like virgins, and they do not consume the 5 grains, but instead inhale the wind and drink the dew. They ride on clouds and control flying dragons, venturing beyond the 4 seas. With their divine power, they prevent flaws and diseases in all things, ensuring abundant harvests. I find this to be madness and disbelief. Indeed, Lian Shu said, just as the blind cannot appreciate the beauty of shapes and patterns, and the deaf cannot hear the sound of bells and drums, are blindness and deafness confined merely to the body? Understanding experiences them too, as your words have just shown. These divine beings and their virtue will transform all beings into one to pacify the chaos of the world. Why should they concern themselves with worldly affairs? To them, nothing is harmful. Though floodwaters reach the sky, they will not drown. Though a great drought melts metal and stone and scorches the earth and hills, they will not be burned. By merely scraping off the dust and chaff from them, one could mold a Yao or a Shun. Why should they consent to bother with mere things? A man from Song, who sold ceremonial hats, made a trip to Yu, but the people of Yu shaved their heads and tattooed their bodies and had no use for his wares. Yao ruled the nation and brought order within the seas. But he went to see the 4 masters, of the distant Guxi Mountain, north of the Feng River, where he momentarily lost his realm.
Thank you, Mark. Let's stop here. I had just one the footnotes here. Yao and Song, they are one of the 5 legendary emperor, and around the 23rd century BC, and they are considered as a sage king, but not in the eyes of Lao Tzu, by the way. The two are considered, one of the reasons they've been considered as a sage is because they don't pass the throne to their offspring. That is quite remarkable. But in Lao Tzu's view, they are second, they are the best leader, only in the second tier best leader. They like to draw they in their mind is about how to got affection from the citizens, and they already departed from the Tao, and that's why the society getting become more chaotic, become more selfish, and probably history does validate Lao Tzu's the view, because if the governance is reflected the non-doing, and then the society would not go down the drain and will not become chaos later on. So that's just a side information. And otherwise, this part, I think it's also pretty straightforward. I consider it is already talking, again, similarly, instead of great and little, talking about the worldly, focus on worldly, and the others are really beyond the worldly. Like start by, Yao, the emperor, was thinking about to relinquish his throne and try to give one that is noble, one have the high virtue. And that Xu Yu, he simply refused, because he's not his mind is not about the worldly affair. By the way, the name I forgot. Oh yeah, there is another the footnote. Xu Yu phonetically sounds like a word unreal. Xu Yu. I think it's probably deliberate. It's the fiction. It's not a real person probably, and it may existed before Chuang Tzu. May existed beyond this book. Zhuang Zhou simply borrowed that fictional figure, one of the legendary the divine being, if you like. They sort of become immortal. So it starts that by Yao is the emperor. So Xu Yu is someone who is really unbound, by the worldly affair. So
shall we ask
open for questions? Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you. Folks, next up is going to be Mark. If anybody else wants to ask questions or comment, go ahead and type an exclamation mark or raise your hand in Zoom. Mark, go ahead.
Yeah, I thought this was a fascinating passage. And there were some confusing things about it, which are not necessarily immediately transparent, like the intervention of the story about a man from Sung who traded in official ceremonial hats. And he sold hats, but he went to these people and they had all cut their hair and tattooed themselves, so they didn't wear hats. It's kind of sneaking in an image of maybe it's the contrast between what is useful to one person and what is necessary for one person's livelihood is completely useless and unnecessary to other people and for their livelihood. But what really struck me was the last lines, where what happens to Yao when he goes to visit the four masters of distant the Kushe Mountains. And your translation, Paiji, says, where he momentarily lost his realm. And, you know, before I read the last word, actually, when I was reading where he momentarily lost his, there was a thought that flashed through my mind that he was going to lose his mind in that. And in that, it reminded me of the story of the four great rabbis in the Talmud who tried to, in a sense, go beyond the pale of God. And really, I think two of them were said to have lost their mind. So, but then I saw, oh, his realm. So I was a little surprised there. Now, I wasn't exactly sure what you meant by where he momentarily lost his realm. To me, it suggested that he did momentarily lose everything that he knew and understood before. And when I looked at the translation of Palmer, he says, and he became aware that his rule was meaningless. So I think you could make the argument that your two translations kind of meet somewhere in the middle, because I can't see where the translation is now on the screen. In the last line.
Peachy, could you scroll down to that? Scroll to that. Yep.
Yeah, momentarily lost his realm. You could say means that he lost any understanding of his realm and lost the meaning of his realm. And in that way, I think it would intersect with Palmer's translation, which says he became aware that his rule was meaningless.
Yeah,
so,
that's the interpretation. This is the translation to reflect the original text. The original text simply saying he lost his world. His world. He's the throne. He's the realm. So it's it is up to interpretation. Indeed, it could mean that he either found the meaningless his throne, or he simply he sort of suddenly forgot about his world. Can also say the lost here is mean he forgot about his throne. He simply enjoyed that divine living.
and how about the word momentarily? Was this a temporary experience? Was it temporary, or was this something that stayed with him now?
The that's what these two character. To me, it's like obviously, if you look at the Yao is a historic figure, so it's clearly it's momentary because he continued his throne and eventually handed to another a sage, able person who actually managed to control the water and to basically not control, but how to divert the water and effectively.
Yeah, he said the Great Flood.
Yeah, that's right.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. I just want to add one comment. I mean, I love this, because these are what Zhuang Zi is doing is that in so many different ways, he's showing the interaction between people who are focused on just the 10,000s of things versus the Tao. And here, he's showing this character, Yao, who encounters these sages who are focused on the divine. 4 of them, not just one, but 4 of them. And then it shows him a way of being which is very, 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 very different, so different from his way of being that momentarily he loses what his realm was, he kind of forgets about it because he's seeing something, but he doesn't live there. So he kind of has to come back. Momentarily he saw this vision of this is what is possible, and he lost, the memory of what he had. But he wasn't there. He wasn't a sage. So he kind of, so I think that momentary thing also captures something very real, that people who are focused on 10,000 things can get glimpses of this other way of being, even though they cannot operate at there. They get that glimpse, and that will for a moment show them what it means to be with the Tao. And then they kind of fall back. But I'm sure that memory remains with them, but as only not as implemented in them, but as a possibility or something. So I just find each of these things beautiful. Now, Laura, you wanted to comment on something. If you can figure out how to unmute, we can go ahead and have you comment. If anybody else wants to comment, you're welcome to do that.
I'm unmuted. Okay, this is really far off the track, but I think what, in all of these histories and everything, it's always this upper class, and then this lower class. And, there are all these people in between, aren't there? And maybe those are the ones who fight their wars or whatever. And those are the ones who maybe do their food, gather food. Maybe it is a society unto itself. But look at it, how far back it goes and how non-intrinsic it is to our society today. The middle class is like this lost class, and we try and revive it all the time, but we don't quite get it there, and it just sort of floats out there as, as a name, but we don't deal with it very well. And in 300 BC, they didn't deal with it either. And they never have throughout all of society, that class in between, the ones who are, the gifted and the golden and the gilded, and then all of the, the other ones at the other end who are not. But where are all those other people? Who are they? Where do they belong in the society among these? They're never spoken about. They don't seem to have a role. And, how do they get played for within all of these philosophies? They don't exist.
Thank you, Laura. Let Peichi respond. Let me put it as a question. In Zhuang Zi, he's currently distinguishing between these two people. The big people who are focused on the big and people who are focused on the small. Is there something in the middle, according to Zhuang Zi?
His writing obviously tried to focus the contrast, and he's probably not tasked to describe the whole society, the middle. The middle usually really reflects the I, just to amplify. I'm not sure the question clearly.
Yeah.
IG, maybe
I do feel, yeah. What I want to say is that Zhuang Zi himself, if you look at the author as life, he's actually not belong to the upper class. He's not belong to the lower class either. Maybe in a way.
AG, can you? I'm going to have to take the call. Can you handle the moderating?
Yeah, sure. I consider Zhuang Zi himself is like a middle. He is not a upper class. He's not an official. He's simply, but you can see the middle class. Comparing today, we don't really have a middle class today. Everybody is either very rich or working poor and busy. Hardly have any time to be a scholar. Scholar really means you have a leisure, and you're not professional, isn't it? So indeed, we feel like we are not materially rich, but we are very, very poor, become poorer each day, to be honest with you. And we are just so tied up with all the living things, not really living anymore. We are basically live for the job rather than job for the living. That's the sad thing. And Nick, if you wish to have any question, please go ahead.
Yeah, thanks.
Yes.
But I think Mark tried to intervene.
I was just going to say that the person, I'm sorry, I don't know your name, who asked the question about the ordinary person. I think we get a portrait of this ordinary person in the man from Sung who sold hats. And in some way, we're being told about these great divine beings, and the stories being told about Yao and Shun, two of the greatest kings in their mythology. And yet all of a sudden we hear about this man who sells hats, who goes to a city where everybody's bald and tattoos their head. And it's almost as if the tempo of the prose, I'm not sure if this is prose or poetry, but the tempo of the language shifts into a register where it can become comprehensible to the person on the street in a way. I'm not sure what you think of that.
Yeah, let me quickly respond to this. Thank you for the question. I was gonna give my thought about this. Firstly, I agree with you. This part of the text are a little bit odd, but think deep. Probably you already get it out yourself as well. These two paragraphs, it's really about the same thing, about the perspective. When we often act or express in a way with our own perspective without realizing our individual perspective may not be shared by others, right? That's why the subtitle here is the worldly and the beyond. And here, obviously, even between the worldly, there is different perspective. The guy, the tradesperson who basically sell the hat and went to another kingdom without realizing the people there don't need a hat. They tattoo their head. They basically shaving their head. They're using their head as a way to express themselves. So nobody would bother to buy the hat. So that just indicates the different perspective. And one really should realize you should not always operate within your own perspective without realizing that others may not share the same perspective. And the next one is not that difference. It's again about Yao. Basically, he does the worldly thing, and only when to a mountain he realized the world can be very different. That's what I read from the text.
I don't know if the story has been modernized, but I heard that he convinced them that they needed the hat to prevent the tattoo from getting sunburned.
No, don't. The thing I like about this, I actually like this style of Zhuang Zhou, because what I see in it is somebody who really loves the Tao and can see all kinds of manifestations of it. So he's just actually showing you this, he's flowing from this one interaction to another interaction. And he's just showing how these things apply. It's like some people are aware of the divine, and then those beings are very, very different from people who are focused on this. And the people, like in the case of the hat, people who are focused on the 10,000 things, they may be focused on only a small part of those 10,000 things, and they will run into other people who are focused on a completely different set of those 10,000 things, and they will not be able to actually trade or talk to each other. So I see it as this, I love I love these stories, because each story actually is showing you a different, it's telling you a story of the Tao and the dance of the Tao and the 10,000 things in different ways, and our interaction with those things. Next up is Nick. Nick, go ahead. Nick, you need to unmute.
Yes, but I heard some noise, maybe from Laura. She might want to say something.
Laura,
Not?
Okay.
No, okay, fine. That's okay. Yeah, this conversation is interesting. So I want to add my thought on the impact on ordinary people with 2 points. Number one, Peggy, if you could show on the screen the end of the first paragraph, it makes my articulation easier. Yeah, so here, oh, it goes away. The one talks about the kitchen. I mean the first paragraph of the Chinese, but the ones talked about the kitchen, the chef.
Yeah, there it is.
Yeah.
This?
Yeah, right there. Oh, it went away again. Yeah, here. So the bottom, the sacrificial officiant does not leave the altar to take his place. So in Chinese, well, it went away again. It's jumpy on my screen. I don't know why. Peggy.
Now this.
It took, yeah, right there. Yeah, you got it. Even if the cook abandons the kitchen, right there. Yeah, there we go. So in Chinese, this has come down as a saying that's repeated throughout the time and throughout the society to indicate the proper position of each individual and to advise not to do things that's not assigned to you. So basically, each person has a proper place in the society and just do the job that's assigned to you, but not to overdo or do the jobs of others. So this has become so influential culturally, and this is the source of that saying. So in a sense, even though the majority of the text talks about the kings and the the demigod, the mythology, all that. But culturally, the text has come down to influence the ordinary operation of the society in this way. So that's my first point. My second footnote is personal. Paige, if you go down a bit, where the text talks about this mountain where the demigod lives, and they don't eat, they breathe the wind and drink the dew. Yeah, there you go, right there. So they inhale the wind and drink the dew. And this is not as famous as the first citation in the Chinese culture, but nevertheless carries a bit of influence. And the saying here, to inhale the wind and drink the dew, has also come down in the ordinary thinking and the writing on the culture. It has an impact on me personally when I was not realizing this, actually. So when I first came across the offering of the Coca-Cola and Pepsi-Cola, there were so many brands, right? So I knew nothing of them, and I could not choose. And then I came across this brand, Mountain Dew. Mountain Dew. And say, that's it. I'm going to drink Mountain Dew just like this old sages, drinking the dews. And that's it. So for many years, I drank nothing but Mountain Dew. Not because there's an advertisement, the dew, the basketball player and drink the dew. I drank the dew, the Mountain Dew, because of this implicit influence on me of this texture source, which I was not aware until I read it today. So thank you.
That's wonderful, Nick. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. I think this is one of my favorites in the first chapter. This is it all right if I read it one more time? And
Yes,
if
please.
you have any thoughts on it, would love to hear, because this is a way of capturing what it means to live with the Tao. On the distant Gushi mountain, there dwell divine beings. Their skin are as cold as ice and snow, magnificent like virgins. And they do not consume the 5 grains, but instead inhale the wind and drink the dew. They ride on clouds and control flying dragons, venturing beyond the 4 seas. With their divine power, they prevent flaws and diseases in all things, ensuring abundant harvest. Can you say a little bit more about this description?
I do feel that this is not a unique description by Zhuang Zi. It is a kind of a classic writing, which is very romantic, very expressional, and historically, it's out of our imagination, vivid imagination, and it is really about the spiritual side of things. But readers are sometimes do feel that's a possibility. They consider it as a physically possible, and that's why there are some Taoists, pursuing this divinity, the immortal thing, and they do believe that's a possibility. Just like today, there are people still believe that we can fly, we can, what's the word? The levitating is kind of the word. Basically, so they are looking at the physical thing. What really the essence, the underlying meaning is really about the spiritual. It's not necessarily physical. That's why I consider that lots of Taoists really do not understand the Tao Te Ching fully. Yeah, that's all I can add.
Yeah, no, thank you.
I personally, yeah.
No, thank you. Thank you. That's great.
Yeah.
Because all of this is kind of describing what spirit can do, the way in which spirit can act. And the only way you can describe it is through analogy to physical things. So it is that's what it's trying to do. And I find it really, really fascinating that this is juxtaposed right next to the person selling hats. You know, it comes, you know, just 2 paragraphs down, there is a person selling hats to people who are tattooing their heads, shaving their heads and tattooing themselves. So it's just that, you know, I love this multiple styles that he's using in order to make that deep point. One getting, you know, in an elevated way, in a spiritual way, and one kind of getting down into the thickness of everyday life and showing you something. And they're saying that, oh, look, there is something similar going on in all these places. Thank you. Next up is Mark. Mark, go ahead.
I was just wondering about what the Chinese word here is for Milky Way galaxy, or the Milky Way. I'm not sure how you translated it. Because I'm interested in the Milky Way and the perception of the Milky Way in ancient times. And our word galaxy comes from the Greek root gala, which means milk. And you can find the same root gala for milk in the Ramayana, where the churning of the ocean is really the churning of the Milky Way. So what is the word that is used here, and what does it mean in translation, would you say?
Good question, Mark, again. That's probably the rough impression that ancient had when they observed the sky. And what exactly the word here is is this part. The Milky Way in the sky is like representing like a river. So the ancients, they already observed that sort of you know, river in the sky. And so this is probably as good as we can get by using the Milky Way. Not meant to be scientifically have to the depths of you know, modern science. They realize the Milky Way as we know today.
Yeah, that's really interesting, because it does echo what the Egyptians thought about the Milky Way as a reflection of the Nile River, and the ancient Irish of the River Boyne, and the River Ganga in India.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. So it's a rough visual impression. Yes. But the great you point out, I was thinking about that too. I said, "Whoa, really? They understand the Milky Way, not in the, you know, the what we know today, but there is more the visual form, I guess."
Well, certainly it's the visual form that you can see when there's absolutely no light pollution, which is you know, very striking impression.
Yeah, the ancient is able to see more often than we do. And also during that time, I would reckon not so crowded because of less pollution.
Yep. Thank you. So Paige, next is going to be Nick, but I want to ask you, how much of the chapter 1 is remaining? Just want to
not much now. That's the last part, is the usefulness and application. Let me just quickly go through two basically that's it. So
Okay.
so two part. We can certainly cover that.
Okay, let's do one thing. Nick, let's cover the last part. So we would have finished chapter 1, and then we will have a discussion. Mark, could you do the
Yeah, that's great. But Srikant, I just want to add a comment on Mark's question, so it may be smoother if I just say it now.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, so thank you, Mark, for that etymology of the Greek galaxy. So I just want to share the Chinese word for that. So the Chinese poet used a composite of two characters, he, han. So he means river. So as Peggy explained, so when the ancient look at the sky, say, wow, that looks like a river. And the Han is interesting because you must have heard the Han Chinese in reference. The Chinese, majority of Chinese are Han ethnicity. So the Han in that context actually means star. So it's the river of stars in Zhuang Zi's time. And obviously that Han then later developed and used to symbolize the ethnicity of the Chinese majority, He Han. Thanks.
Thank you, Nick. All right,
Great,
Mark.
thank you, Nick. Yeah. Thank you, Nick. By the way, that the Han dynasty wasn't formed yet. And the great, yeah, you point out that's reflect the star, yeah, the river star. Right.
Go ahead, Mark.
You muted the mark.
Okay. Hui Zi said to Zhuang Zi, "The king of Wei gave me seeds of a large gourd. I nurtured it until it bore fruit capable of containing 5 picules. To use it to hold water or gruel, its hardness prevents me from lifting it by myself. I split it in half to make dippers, but they proved unfit for any purpose. It wasn't a matter of the gourds lacking in size. Rather, I deemed them useless and thus smashed them to pieces." Zhuang Zi responded, "Sir, you are indeed clumsy when it comes to utilizing the large. In Song, there was a man renowned for his skill in crafting a salve to prevent chapped hands. While his family earned their livelihood by bleaching silk in water generation after generation. Upon hearing about the salve, a traveler offered 100 pieces of gold for its recipe. The family deliberated, acknowledging, "For generations we've engaged in silk bleaching, yielding no more than a few pieces of gold. Now, in a single morning, we're offered 100 pieces of gold for the recipe. Let him have it." The traveler obtained the salve recipe and presented it to the king of Wu, who was in conflict with the state of Yue. The king appointed the man to lead his troops, and in that winter they engaged in a naval battle with the Yue forces, delivering a resounding defeat. A portion of the conquered territory was granted to the man as a fief. The salve, whether applied for one purpose or another, possessed the capability to prevent chapped hands. However, one individual utilized it to secure a fief, while the other remained limited to silk bleaching, illustrating different applications. Sir, you possessed a gourd sizable enough to contain 5 piculs. Why did you not consider fashioning it into a grand tub for leisurely voyages? Across rivers and lakes, instead of worrying over its largeness for dipping into things. Clearly, you still harbor much underbrush in your mind. Hui Zi said to Zhuang Zi, I have a large tree. People call it a catalpa. Its trunk is swollen and irregular, not conforming to the measuring lines, its small branches twisted and irregular, not conforming to the rules. Set it up for the market. The carpenters pay it no attention. Now your words, grand but useless, are universally dismissed too. Zhuang Zi replied, have you not seen the lynx? It crouches low, waiting for its prey. It leaps from east to west without regard for heights or depths. It moves swiftly through narrow openings, yet dies captured in traps. Now the wild ox, its size rivals that of the hanging clouds. It possesses grandeur, yet it cannot catch mice. Now, you have a large tree, troubled by its lack of utility. Why not plant it in the land of nothingness, in the vast wilderness, wandering aimlessly beside the idol, lounging beneath it with unattached ease, unharmed by axe or saw, of no use to anyone? Where would be its hardship?
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right, folks, questions, comments. So this is the end of chapter 1. So any thoughts? How about we stop sharing so people can see each other a little bit better, and then we can bring that up if you want, if anybody wants, ask for it. So just overall comments about this. Is our first experience with Zhuang Zhou. So what do you think of his writing? You know, I'll get started. You know, I simply love this. There's several things going on here. For example, in the last part, I love, okay, so suppose you had this great tree. Okay, the Tao is like the great tree. And it is, what would you do with it? What would you do with it? If you try to say, oh, I want to make a house out of it, then you will have to chop it into pieces. And it doesn't really work that way. You know, Tao flows as it will. And you will, if all you can do is to say, okay, all I know what to do with wood is to make houses and planks, Tao is not going to be useful to you. But then he's asking, so what can you do with it? Or these goods, which are much larger than what you can imagine. That's what the Tao is like. What will you do with it? So I think it's a very profound question. And I love the way in which he asked the question. You know, the good story, I think it's just beautiful, beautiful. So he's actually asking you to think about the application of Tao in your own life from so many different angles. It's just fascinating. So that's my favorite thing about this. Firstly, the sheer, I love the artistry of using all these different styles in order to point to the Tao. I also like the practicality of it, of saying, how do you use the Tao? And he's not putting it in an abstract way, but in a concrete way. If you had a good, much, much larger than what you had, or if we had a tree, what would you do? So that's my favorite. I really like this. So any thoughts about this work as a whole? Any comments on the translation? Go ahead and type an exclamation mark. Kevin, you've been very silent. What do you think of Zhuang Zi, and what do you think? Kevin, would you like to share?
Thank
Anybody?
you. I'm so noisy here. So can you hear me?
We can hear you very clearly. Go ahead.
Okay, yeah. That's profound. I just catch a little bit every time from different perspective. I learn something, catch it, and it live with nature. If you think deeper, it's a similar comparison, big and small, and useless is big use. So when I read it, it's a similar concept of when we read Tao Te Ching. So it's just for my personally, we live daily a materialized money-driven society. It's really you sit back, lie down on the bed, you think about it. Yeah, it's live with Tao. It's make you happy, inner happy. Less anxious. So that's big picture for each chapter. It's I think I still need to learn deeper about it. Yeah, and not like it though. Yeah.
Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you.
Peichi, if you would like to comment, you're welcome to do that. Otherwise, we'll go to Ella.
I just want to draw the attention to the last paragraph. And the last paragraph seems to me it seems to tie to the center, the center message of that the whole chapter is about being able to wandering without unfettered, ease. It's talking about the useless tree, and yet you can use it as a shade, and can wandering underneath, and without in the endless boundless space, it's not being constrained. I guess that's the idea about the author's intellectual mind, his writing. And so this first chapter really set a tone about his style of writing and thinking, and that's why he's able to see things, write things in a grand perspective.
Thank you, Peichi. Next up is going to be Ella. Ella, go ahead.
Yes, I also like how he's developing this, and is provoking one to think in different directions. With the example of the gourd, the large gourd, that is utilitarian. It can hold a few things. He asked, well, you must have a lot of, a bit of muddled thinking. I'm putting this in my own words now because I don't have the text, but perhaps you weren't thinking because you could have built you could have grown a vastly large gourd and used it as a ship. In other words, you could go places. So think far, think big, and think wide, and think creatively. Don't think small. But then he also goes in a different direction, and not in an opposite direction, but in a different direction with the tree. And a great visual image of the twisted trunk. It has no utility. It can't be made into boards to build a home, for instance. It's large, probably quite magnificent, I would think, in its own interesting and unique way. So why not put it out in a vast land somewhere and use it as shade? So you can think in different ways and not to be restrictive in your thinking about what you do and how you view things. Thank you.
Thank you, Ella.
Thank you a lot. But by the way, that you know, the last dialogues between Zhuang Zi and Hui Zi. Hui Zi is actually his good friend. In his writing, he mentioned him many times. You can see they are very friendly and know each other. You know, the tone, that the large tree that Hui Zi has mentioned is he used that metaphor, sarcastically try to criticize the Zhuang Zi's saying are grand but useless, right? And without realizing, Zhuang Zi gave his further lecture about this usefulness.
Yeah.
What mean by usefulness?
Yeah, thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. Laura, what did you think about Zhuang Zi? How do you think it compares with Tao Te Ching? Any comments on the overall impression of Zhuang Zi on you?
I think it's wonderful in an extension of it, broadening of it. But I want to tell you something. All I can think of is his improv group doing this as an improv. Can you imagine in this language doing an improvisational thing, playing that out? It would be hysterical, wouldn't it? Come on, it would be very much fun. I think it would be genius.
Thank you, thank you. And that's exactly what this guy is doing. He's improvising. He's making
Yes.
It's just saying, okay, this is a good. What can you do with it? And you just expand it. Exactly.
It's complete improvisation, the whole thing. It's brilliant, and
Yeah.
it's so modern. And I think it would for us to do it in our way, it would be a lot of fun, and it would be interesting to see where it would go.
Wonderful. Thank you, Laura. All right. So let's see. We're about 9:54. Let's go with Mark, and then we will go to any kind of closing comments that Peiji might have. And we're going to do one more of this. And I think this is very good, Peiji. I really like the translations. And let's go to Mark first, and then we will talk. Mark, go ahead.
Thank you. I really feel like it's a fascinating challenge. A challenge, notwithstanding, Laura, your earlier comment, a challenge to the ordinary person, just as much as it is a challenge to a ruler. And it's much more comprehensible than the Tao Te Ching. In a sense, it's almost like bringing the Tao Te Ching down to earth. And the structure seems to proceed by dualities of stories that have minor differences and yet convey the same information to try to reach as many people as possible. I'm getting a feeling of in a sense, it's popularism. Thank you.
Peiji, do you have any comments on that?
Yeah, thanks for your sharing your thought. I agree with you, and in some way, Zhuang Zi's writing really bring the teaching of Tao Te Ching more lively, and using those parables and fables, and really more, I think it can resonate more with the readers, and not as dry as the Tao Te Ching, which is very concise. And indeed, actually the writing itself, it's actually quite hard to read. But once for the modern readers, because the words that is being used by Zhuang Zi is there are some are really obscure in today's term, and there are two reasons why Tao Te Ching is relatively easy to read, but obviously very hard to understand. Why Zhuang Zi is it's actually it's hard to read, but once you know how to read it, it's relatively easy to comprehend, because it's sort of more related to the less conceptualized, more to the actual living, the actual the resonates with the reality more than the purely on a concept level. I do feel that more I delve into Zhuang Zi's writing, more I like it, and I really encourage people to not just look at what you can get from it, but just look at the history, look at the humans, thinking, how you can a human can be able to actually think freely, and without the square that we often put into for ourselves, put into ourselves about the square we are in. So yeah, I really enjoyed this book myself, about even the journey of translation. I do find translation can be hard, and sometimes actually can deter. If it's become too complicated, it can deter the reader to actually to dive into it. But I hope my effort will be useful for people for more readers to pay attention, to be interested in the book.
Thank you, Peji. I would make one more comment. I'm quite stuck. I'm quite struck with the variety of styles that Zhuang Zi uses, because in the next chapter he gets it's proper philosophy that he's doing, and he just effortlessly moves between doing kind of hardcore philosophy to being a court jester, then to being like this poet, inspirational poet, and he just keeps going between these things, and there is a pattern to it. He's saying all of this is the Tao, is the expression of Tao, and I will show you how it is this way. And if you can approach it this way, you can approach it this way. If you can approach it this way, you can approach it that way. So he's actually encouraging you to use your mind like he does in so many different ways too. One question I had for you, in terms of translation, how is translating Tao Te Ching different from translating Zhuang Zhou? What has been your experience so far?
I think overall there is not much difference. Like I said, it's harder to read initially to read the text, because there are so many words are really I don't understand. So there is a bit of research in that. But once you sort of understand the ancient text, what it really mean, then I feel it's easier to understand than the Tao Te Ching, because the message partly because it's all within the context of the teaching of Tao Te Ching already, and certainly if one understand the Tao Te Ching, one can understand the Zhuang Zi a lot easier. And in fact, many people in the history, they actually understanding Tao Te Ching by reading the Zhuang Zi to some extent. I have to say, personally, I feel Zhuang Zi still haven't grasped the full depths of Tao Te Ching. I will share my view on that later on, and particularly in the next chapter. But it's not easy. He's a brilliant, intellectual. He's the brilliance in intellectual sometimes can be an obstacle, right? But he still managed to have, lots of awareness, able to, set aside. So that's sort of impression I have. And that's all I have to say now. For now.
Thank you, Peiji. Next up is going to be Mark. Peiji, how much time do you have?
I can have 5 to 10 minutes. Yeah.
Okay, very good. So we'll wrap it up. Let's give Mark a chance to ask, and then we will wrap it up. Mark, go ahead.
Thanks, Shrikant. The only other thoughts I had right now was that two ideas. One is that in both chapters, I believe, we had a reference to the lack of understanding. In the first chapter, we were told that, I think it was in the first chapter, that just as blind people are limited, so people can be blind intellectually. And in the second chapter, there was that translation that Peiji gave us about our understanding being full of thrush bushes or something like that. Like we have a lot of things to clear away before our understanding can get clear. So that certainly seems to be one of the focuses. But, and the second point, in spite of its Taoist roots, outwardly, the Zhuang Zi seems to have almost the shape of the analects, because it proceeds by master and student, or king asking king. It almost has the sound or the feel of the analects, which is something else I thought of.
Thank you, Mark. I have the same impression too. I feel Zhuang Zi is not really bound on anything, even not even the Taoist thought. He later on you will find that he even criticized Lao Tzu, not directly, but use someone else's words, not directly on the Lao Tzu's saying or doing, but rather what he has left, the legacy to his relatives, overly, sadness, mourning his, his life. But there is a varied point. What I try to say, he's really truly free from any attachment, any constraint, and that's why it's very fascinating to read his writing and his thoughts, and his literature. The writing is beautiful, and it's been copied by many generations afterwards. Afterwards. Yeah.
Thank you. Ella, any quick point? Go ahead.
Real quickly, yes, I would just say that he sort of reminds me in his writing style, his philosophic writing style is similar to Kierkegaard, who's very deep, profound, and yet he has a great narrative style that just sort of takes you in over time, and you're learning the messages, you're learning the understandings, and yet it's a story, it's a narrative. So I just wanted to say that, and I really like the imaginative approach that he has. That's my favorite part of it. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Peichi, for bringing Zhuang Zi to us. Really appreciate it. And what happens is that in your hands of you doing the translation and then talking about it, I think it's very special. That's the best way to actually kind of really take this in. Many people you noticed were asking, okay, where does this word come from? And you were able to do that. So I really look forward to our journey on Zhuang Zi. And thank you again, Peichi.
Thank you for the opportunity. Like I said, I take this opportunity to further refine my translation. And I will take your words on board, Mark, and to see if I can put some additional notes. For example, the reference to the Milky Way. Things like that. So thanks for the opportunity.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
See you next week.
See you next week. 1 week from now, we're going to be doing chapter 2. All right. See you. Bye.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye from Chicago.